Most people think of a stress ball as something you squeeze when you're anxious. But what happens inside your hands, your nervous system, and your cardiovascular system when a healthy adult over 65 does it deliberately, every single day, for 7 consecutive days? The answer connects to one of the strongest predictors of how long and how well you will age, and most people have never heard of it. It begins the moment you make your first squeeze. Day one, your hands, your muscles, and a signal your body hasn't received in a while. Let's begin with something that happens quietly, steadily, and largely invisibly after the age of 60. Your hands are losing strength, not dramatically, not all at once, but consistently and in ways that matter more than most people realize. The muscles of the hand and forearm, the flexors that curl your fingers, the extensors that open them, the intrinsic muscles between the bones of your hand, are subject to the same age-related process that affects every muscle in your body. Scientists call it sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass and the quality of muscle function that accelerates after 60 and continues year by year unless it is actively challenged. For many adults, the hands are among the first places this decline becomes noticeable in everyday life. The grip on a jar lid that used to open easily now requires more effort. Carrying grocery bags for longer distances feels more tiring. Turning a key, buttoning a shirt, or holding a heavy pan steady becomes slightly less effortless than it once was. These changes feel minor at first, but they reflect a real and measurable shift in the neuromuscular system of the hand. Now, on day one, you pick up a stress ball and begin squeezing. The moment your fingers close around the ball and begin applying force, several things happen simultaneously. The flexor muscles of your fingers and palm contract. Your forearm muscles, particularly the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor carpi muscles, activate to support and amplify the grip. The small intrinsic muscles of your hand, which are responsible for the fine coordination of finger movement, engage to stabilize the squeeze. Your nervous system sends repeated motor signals down through your arm to coordinate the timing and intensity of all these contractions. This is a resistance exercise. It is modest in intensity compared to lifting weights, but for the specific muscles of the hand and forearm, muscles that receive very little deliberate resistance training in most adults' daily routines, it is a genuine and meaningful training stimulus. Here is something worth understanding about how muscles respond to resistance, even at modest levels. When a muscle contracts against resistance, small amounts of mechanical stress are placed on the muscle fibers. This stress triggers a biological signaling cascade. Satellite cells, specialized stem cells that live alongside muscle fibers, receive activation signals. Protein synthesis machinery inside the muscle cells increases its activity. The neuromuscular junction, the connection between the nerve signal and the muscle fiber, is activated and reinforced. None of this produces visible results on day one. The process is just beginning, but the signal has been sent and your body has begun responding. By the end of day one, your hand muscles have received a training stimulus they likely haven't experienced in a deliberate, consistent form for some time. Your nervous system has rehearsed the motor pattern of a sustained, controlled grip, and a quiet biological conversation between your muscles and your nervous system has begun. Day two, your forearm, your tendons, and the forgotten connective tissue. By day two, let's look beyond the muscles themselves and into something that is equally important but far less often discussed: the connective tissue of your hand and forearm. Your tendons are the tough, fibrous structures that connect your muscles to your bones. In your hand and forearm, tendons are extraordinarily important. The flexor tendons of your fingers run from the forearm muscles all the way through the palm and into the fingertips, gliding through fibrous sheaths that keep them aligned and lubricated. When you squeeze a stress ball, these tendons are placed under tensile load, a stretching and pulling force that, when applied repeatedly and at appropriate intensity, stimulates the tendons to maintain and strengthen their structure. This matters more after 65 than most people appreciate. Tendons, like muscles, change with age. They become somewhat less elastic, slightly stiffer, and may take longer to recover from mechanical load. Their blood supply is naturally lower than that of muscle tissue, which means they respond more slowly to both training stimuli and to repair processes. But they do respond. Research on tendon adaptation in older adults has confirmed that appropriate mechanical loading, the kind of gentle, repeated tension created by grip exercises, can stimulate collagen production within tendon tissue and support the maintenance of tendon structural integrity. There is also something happening in the small joints of your hand on day 2 that deserves attention. Many adults over 65 experience some degree of morning stiffness or reduced mobility in the finger joints. This can be related to osteoarthritis, the gradual wearing of joint cartilage that is among the most common conditions in older adults, or simply to the reduced joint fluid circulation that comes from extended periods of rest. When you squeeze a stress ball, the repeated compression and relaxation of your grip cycles synovial fluid, the lubricating fluid inside your joints, through the joint space. This mechanical pumping action helps distribute nutrients to the cartilage and may contribute to reduced stiffness and improved joint mobility over time. Some people notice by day 2 or day 3 that their hands feel slightly more mobile and less stiff during the first part of the morning. This is consistent with what the joint physiology would predict. Regular, gentle movement of the hand joints supports the circulation of synovial fluid and may reduce the accumulation of the overnight joint stiffness that many adults find uncomfortable. By day 2, your tendons, your joint cartilage, and your synovial fluid are all beginning to respond to your new daily habit. Day 3, grip strength and the longevity connection. Most people have never heard of. By day 3, it is time to discuss something that may be the most compelling reason of all to take grip strength seriously after 65. In the past 2 decades, grip strength has emerged as one of the most powerful and consistent predictors of healthy aging and longevity that researchers have ever identified. This is not a minor or preliminary finding. It has been replicated in large population studies involving hundreds of thousands of participants across multiple countries and decades of follow-up. Study after study has found that grip strength, measured simply by how hard you can squeeze a device called a dynamometer, predicts future health outcomes with remarkable accuracy. Lower grip strength in midlife and later life has been associated with higher risk of cardiovascular disease, earlier onset of physical disability, greater risk of hospitalization, longer recovery times after illness or injury, and lower overall survival. A major international study published in The Lancet found that grip strength was a stronger predictor of cardiovascular mortality than systolic blood pressure in the populations studied. Why would the strength of your hand predict so much about your overall health? The answer is that grip strength is not simply a measure of hand muscle strength. It is a proxy, a reliable reflection of overall neuromuscular health, systemic muscle mass, and the functional reserve of multiple body systems simultaneously. A strong grip in an older adult tends to reflect well-maintained muscle mass throughout the body, a nervous system that is efficiently activating muscle fibers, good nutritional status, and a body that has maintained its physical capabilities. Grip strength declines with age, but it declines faster in people who do not use and challenge their hands deliberately. And research on grip training in older adults has found that targeted grip strength exercises can produce measurable improvements in grip force, even in people well into their 70s and 80s. By day 3, you have given your grip strength 3 consecutive days of deliberate training stimulus. The longevity research gives this simple habit a significance that goes far beyond what the modest size of a stress ball might suggest. Day 4. Your nervous system and the brain-hand connection. By day 4, there is a dimension of daily stress ball squeezing that most people never consider, and it reaches all the way into your brain. Your hands are extraordinarily well represented in your brain's sensory and motor maps. The region of the brain responsible for processing sensory information, the somatosensory cortex, dedicates a disproportionately large area to the hands, particularly the fingertips. The motor cortex, which sends movement signals to the body, similarly devotes an outsized neural territory to the fine and precise movements of the hand. This is because human hands are among the most neurologically complex structures in the body, capable of extraordinary precision, sensitivity, and coordination. When you squeeze a stress ball, you are not only exercising muscle, you are activating an extensive neural network. Motor signals travel from your brain down through the spinal cord to your hand muscles. Sensory signals travel back up from the pressure receptors in your skin, the stretch receptors in your muscles and tendons, and the position receptors in your joints, informing your brain about the precise details of the squeeze. How much force is being applied, how the ball is deforming, how your fingers are positioned. This bidirectional neural activity is meaningful for brain health. Research in neuroscience has shown that fine motor activity, particularly the kind of precise repeated hand movements involved in grip training, engages prefrontal and cerebellar networks and may support the maintenance of neural pathway integrity over time. Some studies have found associations between maintained manual dexterity and better performance on measures of processing speed, working memory, and executive function in older adults. The general principle is consistent with what we know about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to maintain and strengthen its neural connections in response to active, repeated use. A brain regularly receiving rich sensory and motor signals from active, challenged hands is a brain maintaining those neural pathways in working condition. Dilating during relaxation to deliver oxygen and nutrients, adapting to the mechanical signals of repeated use. Here is where something interesting enters the research picture. Hand grip exercise has been studied specifically in the context of blood pressure management. Research examining non-pharmacological approaches to cardiovascular health investigated what happens when people practice isometric hand grip exercises regularly over several weeks. Isometric grip exercise involves sustained squeezing rather than rapid repeated squeezing, but engages the same fundamental musculature. The results suggested that regular isometric hand grip training was associated with meaningful reductions in resting blood pressure in some participants. The proposed mechanism involves the repeated mechanical stimulation of blood vessel walls during grip exercise, which may promote the production of nitric oxide, a molecule produced by the cells lining blood vessels that causes those vessels to relax and widen. Over time, regular stimulation of this pathway may contribute to improved vascular tone and more flexible blood vessel walls. 7 days is not long enough to produce clinically significant blood pressure changes. The blood pressure research involved weeks to months of consistent training. But by day 5, the vascular signaling pathways that respond to grip exercise have been stimulated 5 times. The biological conversation between your forearm muscles and the blood vessel walls supplying them has begun, and the foundation for longer-term vascular adaptation, should you continue the habit, is being laid. Day 6. Stress, cortisol, and the original purpose of the stress ball. By day 6, it is worth returning to something implied by the name of the object itself. because the relationship between physical squeezing and psychological stress turns out to have genuine biological substance. When you experience psychological stress, a difficult conversation, a worrying thought, a tense situation, your body activates its stress response system. Your adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tense. Your blood pressure rises. This cascade is a normal and healthy short-term response. But when stress is prolonged or chronic, the sustained elevation of cortisol can have negative effects on immune function, sleep quality, cardiovascular health, blood sugar regulation, and even muscle maintenance. For many adults over 65, managing daily psychological stress is a genuine health concern. The physiological effects of chronic stress compound with the natural changes of aging in ways that can affect multiple body systems simultaneously. Here is where deliberate physical activity, even at the modest level of 5 minutes of hand squeezing, becomes relevant to stress biology. Physical movement and muscle contraction stimulate the release of endorphins, naturally occurring compounds produced in the brain and nervous system that have pain-modulating and mood-influencing properties. They also support the regulation of the autonomic nervous system, the same system we discussed in relation to leg elevation, which governs the balance between the active, alert sympathetic state and the restful, restorative parasympathetic state. The tactile experience of squeezing a soft, responsive object also activates sensory pathways that can redirect neural attention away from ruminative or anxious thought patterns. This is not simply a distraction. Research in sensory psychology suggests that focused tactile stimulation can genuinely modulate the activity of brain regions involved in stress processing. By day 6, you have established a daily 5-minute ritual of deliberate physical engagement. Your nervous system may be beginning to associate this ritual with a shift toward calm, focused attention. Some people report that the sessions feel genuinely settling, not just physically but mentally. The biology supports this experience. There is one more thing happening by day 6 that brings this entire week's journey together. Day 7. What has genuinely changed and why this matters most after 65. You have reached day 7. 7 consecutive days of 5 minutes of deliberate grip training with a stress ball. Let's look honestly at what may have genuinely shifted inside your body and what would require longer to fully develop. What may realistically have begun after 7 days. Your hand and forearm muscles have received 7 consecutive days of a resistance training stimulus they were unlikely receiving before. The neuromuscular connection, the quality and efficiency of the nerve signals activating your hand muscles, can begin to improve relatively quickly with consistent practice. Many people notice within the first week that their grip feels slightly more controlled, more deliberate, and more responsive. This is early neuromuscular adaptation, your nervous system becoming more efficient at recruiting the muscle fibers available to it. Your tendons and joint structures have been exposed to 7 days of gentle mechanical loading. The synovial fluid in your finger joints has been cycled regularly through movement. Some people notice reduced morning hand stiffness within the first week of consistent hand exercise. This is consistent with what the joint physiology predicts. Your brain's sensory and motor maps for the hand have been actively engaged every day for a week. The neural pathways connecting your brain to your hand muscles have been rehearsed and reinforced. This kind of consistent neural activation is the foundation on which meaningful improvements in hand dexterity and motor control are built over weeks and months. The vascular signaling pathways in your forearm have been stimulated 7 times. The conversation between your muscles and your blood vessel walls has begun. The foundation for longer-term vascular adaptation is in place should the habit continue. Your stress response system has had 7 sessions of a physical ritual that engages the parasympathetic nervous system and the sensory modulation pathways involved in stress regulation. A consistent daily practice of focused physical engagement is one of the simplest and most accessible tools for supporting psychological calm. What has not changed in 7 days? 7 days of stress ball squeezing will not produce significant muscle hypertrophy, visible increases in hand and forearm muscle size. That requires weeks to months of consistent progressive training. It will not produce clinically measurable reductions in blood pressure. It will not reverse established arthritis or repair damaged joint cartilage. And the longevity benefits suggested by grip strength research reflect decades of maintained physical capability, not 7 days of a new habit. What is genuinely true after 7 days, you have begun. And in the research on neuromuscular aging, beginning matters enormously. The muscles of the hand respond to training at every age. The nervous system retains its capacity for adaptation well into the 70s, 80s, and beyond. The tendons and joint structures of the hand benefit from regular gentle loading throughout life. And grip strength, that quiet, understated measure that turns out to predict so much about long-term health, can be maintained and improved through exactly the kind of simple, consistent daily practice you have just completed for the first time. 5 minutes, every day, a small rubber ball. The biology behind that simple habit reaches further into your health than almost anyone expects. Final summary. Over these 7 days, your body has been responding to a signal it needed but rarely receives. Day 1 gave your hand muscles and nervous system a deliberate resistance stimulus. Day 2 brought your tendons, joint cartilage, and synovial fluid into the story. Day 3 revealed the remarkable longevity science behind grip strength. Day 4 explored the deep brain-hand neural connection. Day 5 connected your squeezing habit to blood flow and vascular signaling. Day 6 addressed the stress biology behind the stress ball's name and found real science underneath it. And Day 7 gave you an honest accounting of what 7 days has genuinely built and what comes next. If you continue beyond 7 days, the neuromuscular adaptation will deepen. The tendon and joint responses will accumulate. The vascular signaling effects will compound. And the grip strength that research consistently identifies as one of the most important markers of healthy aging will be moving in the right direction, 5 minutes at a time, every single day.